Welcome to the only console aim guide you'll ever need. If you're new here, my name's Pest. I'm a top 50 rating on console, 12-time rating on PC, and Valorant coach for over 3 years now. In this video, we'll go over sensitivities, aim curves, different aiming styles, a couple different secret aiming tips, and even my duo and I's personal warm-up that has us consistently top fragging in Radiant. Let's get into it. I want to first start off by cracking the misconception of a perfect sense. I get asked constantly, how do I find my perfect sense? And the truth is that doesn't exist. There are certain strengths and weaknesses to every sense, and when picking a sensitivity, you should consider what strengths and weaknesses you want to work with and best suit you. For example, a lower sense will make micro adjustments much easier and more consistent, but larger flicks feel sluggish and slow. A higher sense will make larger adjustments easier and more free, while making micro adjustments much harder. There's also other things that factor into sensitivity like focus mode and aim curves, which we'll get into in a second, but let's first talk about what makes a good Valorant sense. Valorant throws a lot at you in game compared to other FPSs. With precise mechanics, heavy emphasis on headshots, wide range of maps, util, and playstyles, you really have to be ready for anything at any time. You have to be consistent tapping heads at long range while still being able to shoot util and react quickly in close engagements. This means in order to play Valorant at a high level, you need to be able to abuse both a high sense and a low sense for different situations. On controller, you have two options to address this: aim curves and focus mode. Both are valid, but let's start with aim curves. Most console FPSs don't give you anywhere close to as many options for aim curves as Valorant does, and this is something you need to take advantage of. I think of aim curves similar to mouse acceleration on PC. Linus made a great quick video on this, I'll let it play.
Makes the travel distance of your cursor on the screen reliant on the velocity of your physical mouse movement rather than just the distance that you move your mouse.
This is a similar function that aim curves bring to controller, excluding the velocity aspect. The more intense aim curve you have, the higher sensitivity multiplier you'll have for larger movements, and the lower your sensitivity will be for smaller movements. The reason it's not recommended with a mouse is you naturally have these functions built into your arm with your fingers, wrist, and elbow. Your fingers move a little, your wrist a little more, and your elbow even larger. This combined with the freedom of a mouse and a larger mouse pad make adding that extra dimension and mouse acceleration unnecessary. With a controller, however, this is the only way to replicate the freedom of a mouse. I highly recommend everyone try a higher base sense, somewhere in the area of 9 to 13, with an aim curve of heavy or extreme. In theory, the most intense aim curve that feels good to you is going to be the biggest advantage, which my duo and I feel like extreme is the best, but heavy is a great alternative if extreme feels weird to you. I play on 10.1, 10.1 with an extreme aim curve as I mentioned, and I'm loving it. Next, let's get a little bit deeper into focus mode and ADSing. I'll start by saying my duo and I both have focus mode unbound, but that doesn't mean focus mode is bad. In our opinion, the aim curve does more than enough to be consistent and close to medium range, and long range we either hip fire as well or tap while using ADS. There's a couple advantages to this. First, it frees up a button bind, which is generally super useful to bind something like hold to walk. The other main advantage is not having to toggle in and out of aim modes in tense situations. For example, let's say you're holding for a peek B long and an enemy gecko flashes right in front of you. If you're holding while in focus mode, it is way clunkier to have to unfocus, shoot the flash, and refocus to shoot the enemy, than to do it in one foul swoop while hip firing. There's so many different types of shootable util that will feel impossible to deal with unless you have the correct sensitivity, habits, and are comfortable being accurate while hip firing. Especially for people that are new to tactical FPSs, utilizing focus mode isn't terrible. We just believe that if you can hit the same shots without using focus mode as you can with, it's generally an advantage not to use it. For the three other sensitivities, I'm playing on 9.1, 9.1 with a light aim curve. Since you're only using these modes for micro adjustments, a lower sense is generally an advantage, as well as a lighter aim curve I think is completely fine for this. Since you don't need the flexibility like we do in our base sense, these numbers and aim curves can be more or less whatever feels best to you. Now let's talk about the 4 types of aiming: crosshair placement, micro adjustments, flicking, and tracking. Valorant is a game of crosshair placement and micro adjustments when played correctly. Flicking is still relevant, but in a game like this where you die in 1 bullet to the head, if you don't generally have crosshair placement for an enemy within this range, it requires the enemy to miss in order for you to have a chance in the fight, which once you get to higher ranks, the likelihood of the enemy missing a routine shot is low. Tracking is very relevant as well in the aspect that crosshair placement is you tracking the edges of walls as you move through the map. But tracking in the classic sense is hardly relevant, as if a razor jet is flying over your head, you're likely mispositioned in the first place. If you want to know more about perfect crosshair placement, I recommend checking out my console mechanics guide where I go over it more in depth. Next, let's get into a couple secret tips other coaches aren't talking about. First is aiming with your movement. In almost every other console FPS, you make larger adjustments with your aim and micro adjustments with your movement. Generally, there isn't much downside to this in other games. However, in Valorant, it can be detrimental to rely on it. In a game where you have to be still while shooting, if you use this method against another counter-strafing opponent, you'll be constantly playing catch-up and have low odds of winning the gunfight. Your aim and your movement have to be timed together and in sync, but separate at the same time. Meaning you can't aim with your movement in the sense of stopping in the right place to shoot off of. Focus on counter-strafing properly, aiming while you're moving, stopping, shooting, and repeat. It's okay to have to make slight micro adjustments after stopping before taking your shot, but the majority of your aiming should be done while you're moving. If you want to know more about counter-strafing correctly, I go over it more in my mechanics guide as well. The other tip I want to go over is using your eyes correctly. This is a trap that myself and many of my clients have fallen into because crosshair placement is so stressed in Valorant. When I was learning the game, I was so focused on crosshair placement, I ended up looking at my crosshair 99% of the time. This is objectively the worst way to utilize your eyes, and I'll explain why. There's 2 main moving elements on your screen in a gunfight: your crosshair and the enemy. Your crosshair you have complete control of and will not move unless you move it. The enemy you have 0 control over. So instead of fixing your eyes on the thing you have full control over and tracking the enemy out of your peripherals, you should be going around the map constantly scanning for enemies, not looking at your crosshair. Same with holding angles. Typically when you're holding an angle, your crosshair is a little further out than the actual wall. However, your eyes should be where the enemy is coming from, not on your crosshair. The second part of this tip is once you spot an enemy, your eyes should lock onto their head. I grabbed this concept from my duo. I noticed that when the majority of people, including myself, sense they have a free kill, for example, someone's flashed, they end up not having good gunfight hygiene. But my duo, in any situation, no matter how easy or hard a kill is, only aims for the head. In my opinion, most people look at the entire enemy and try to hit the head out of that. If you can imagine anything your eyes are focused on being clear and anything not in focus being blurry, to most people, this is what it looks like when they see an enemy. This is what it looks like when my duo sees an enemy. In his head, the legs and the body are essentially part of the map. The only thing he's focused on is the head. To sum up those 3 tips quickly, don't aim with your movement. Your movement and aim must be in sync but disconnected at the same time. Unless you're directly practicing crosshair placement, don't look at your crosshair while moving throughout the map. Be constantly scanning for enemies. When the enemy pops up on your screen, lock onto their head with their eyes and let your crosshair follow. Lastly, I want to let you guys in on my duo and I's warm-up we created for ourselves. First, we'll start out with 100% eliminate 50 far. The 100% means we're looking to take our time with our shots and hit nearly 100% accuracy through the 50 bots. Far means we're going to start in front of the stairs and give ourselves a little more distance as well as a more realistic range of angles. Next, we're going to repeat the same process but on this box. Verticality makes shots exponentially harder because you're having to aim on 2 axes. So practicing this is crucial. Try to hit 100% accuracy again and feel free to counter strafe in between shots or stand still the entire time. I recommend mixing it up day by day as one practices your raw aim while the other trains your shots off movement, which are both important. Next, we're going to repeat that exact same thing from a different angle. The last thing we're going to do before we get into death matches is 2 time trial bots. Start with easy and only move up until you can consistently hit 30 out of 30. Like the other scenarios, this is still a warm-up. We want to go slow and try and hit 100% of the bots. Now we'll go into our 4 death matches. The first DM is going to be a normal Phantom or Vandal game, just building some confidence for the day and getting warmed up to fighting real players. The next deathmatch will be Guardian only. This is focusing on your first bolt accuracy as well as syncing your aim with your movement. After the Guardian DM, you'll go into a Ghost only match. This is practicing the same thing but requiring you to hit 2 shots to the head instead of 1, forcing you to continue to have good gunfight hygiene through the entire fight. Lastly, you'll finish it off with a normal Vandal or Phantom deathmatch to get you ready for your comp games. Focus mode in ADS does give you slightly more aim assist, as well as combined with the lower sense it brings, makes aiming feel much easier. But there's a trick to replicate this with your base sense. The extreme aim curve gives you the widest range of lower senses compared to any other aim curve, meaning your sensitivity will be lower for longer, making aim assist feel stronger. I recommend everyone try 9.1 extreme or 10.1 extreme for 2 days, and then lower your sense by 1. The first 2 days are going to feel horrible. You need this to calibrate and get your brain used to the aim curve. Then, as soon as you feel like you're starting to grasp it, you lower your sense by 1. And almost instantly, you should feel an improvement in crosshair control and accuracy. I hope this video helped. I try to go a little bit more in depth on the topic than I do in my other videos. Let me know down in the comments how I did, if it helped, and anything I could do better next time. If you're interested in one-on-one coaching, I've helped hundreds of people reach their dream rank, and there's no better time than now to learn how to play the game correctly the first time, so you don't have to spend hours upon hours in the future getting rid of bad habits. These types of videos take a bunch of time to script, record, and edit, so if you enjoy, drop a like. I'd really appreciate it, and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Other than that, I'll see you in the next one.